Hi, welcome to Web Dynpro ABAP second test training session. We have already seen the Web Dynpro ABAP training course content in the first session. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about Web Dynpro ABAP component architecture. Web Dynpro ABAP component architecture. In this Web Dynpro ABAP component architecture, we are going to see what is Web Dynpro ABAP component, what is Web Dynpro ABAP component interface, what are the controllers. uh, we will detail discuss about those controllers and how do we use those controllers in navigation. Okay, here you can see controllers: component controller, interface controller, custom controller, view controller, and window controller. We have another controller which is a configuration controller. Okay, we have a total 6 controllers: component controller, interface controller, custom controller, view controller, and window controller. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about these controllers and how to create a Web Dynpro component. Yeah, see, we have already discussed in the first session that Web Dynpro component has been designed based on the MVC architecture. Okay, so in MVC architecture, we have already discussed what is view, what is model, and what is controller. Okay, view is used to design the screen layout, and the actual data is displayed to the user in the view level. Okay, model will get the data from database or push the data into database. Controller will steer the application, and controller will act as a bridge between view and model. Okay, so here you can see the WebDynpro ABAP component architecture diagram. WebDynpro uses the principles of MVC paradigm. So here you can see I mean all the controllers are placed in this diagram. Okay, you can see custom controller, component controller, interface controller, window controller, and view controller. But we are talking about the other controller, configuration controller. Okay, so configuration controller will come into picture only when you create a configuration for Web Dynpro component. So we are not going to discuss about the configuration controller as of now, but when we discuss about the configuring the Web Dynpro component, then we will discuss about the configuration controller. But in this diagram, for the time being, we are seeing component controller, custom controller, interface controller, view controller, and window controller. Okay, so right here you have a bigger diagram here, more detailed: component controller, custom controller, interface controller, view controller, and window controller. Okay, how they are interacting with the business logic and how they are placed in the Web Dynpro components, you can see in this picture. Okay, so now we will discuss in detail about these controllers. Okay, so different types of controllers, we have 6 types of controllers: custom controller or component controller. Okay, custom controller or component controller. Before we going to discuss about these controllers, let us just go into the SAP screen and then see what are all these controllers actually exist in the Web Dynpro component. So just go to SAP system, SAP log into SAP, go to SC80 transaction code. SC80 is the transaction code where we create the Web Dynpro components. Okay, go to SC80 transaction code. Yes, here Web Dynpro component or interface. Select the Web Dynpro component or interface from the drop down and enter the required component name here. Okay, enter the required component name and press enter. You will get a pop-up: Web Dynpro component or interface JWDC underscore test1 does not exist. So create object. Yes. Click on S. Yes. Here you get a pop-up. You see the component name, Web Dynpro component name. You can specify the description of the Web Dynpro component. here you will see two different radio buttons, Web Dynpro component and Web Dynpro component interface. Now, to make you understand the difference between Web Dynpro component and Web Dynpro component interface, I should tell you about the difference between class and interface. If any of you know the OOPS concepts, object-oriented programming concepts, then you must be knowing the difference between class and interface. Okay, class is a collection of objects, and in a class you can have methods. Okay, class can have implementation exist for these methods. Okay, in a class you can have implementation exist, but in interface also you can in interface also you can create methods, but for these methods you cannot create implementation in interface. Okay, so interface will provide metadata, but class will provide metadata as well as business, I mean implementation. You can write a logic in the class methods but not in interfaces methods. Okay, so now similar to class and interface, here also we have Web Dynpro component and Web Dynpro component interface. Web Dynpro component is similar to a class. Web Dynpro component interface is similar to interface in OOPS concepts. So here we will make use of the Web Dynpro component only because we are going to design the screen layout and we are going to write some application logics, business logics. And in Web Dynpro component interface, we create Web Dynpro component interface only when we have to reuse the interface in multiple Web Dynpro components. Okay, so as I said, interface will provide the metadata. I mean, let's say for example you have component 1, component 2 and component 3. You are you want to make the methods as generic across all the Web Dynpro components. Now in such scenarios, what you can do is create a Web Dynpro component interface. Okay, Web Dynpro component interface is also called as faceless component. Okay, faceless component because it cannot have implementation carry, it cannot have implementation exist. So to justify that scenario where to make all the components as generic, what you can do is you can create a Web Dynpro component interface and create some methods. Let's say for example 3 methods, method 1, method 2, method 3, and then you can reuse that Web Dynpro component interface in multiple Web Dynpro components. So when you reuse that Web Dynpro component interface, in each component you will have the same metadata available in each component. Okay, method 1, method 2, method 3, same methods are available in component 1, component 2 and component 3. So we will discuss more about Web Dynpro component interface in further sessions, and we will also see the example of usage Web Dynpro component interface. So for the time being, we are going to create Web Dynpro component. Okay, you can enter the description whatever you want. Now here window name. Okay, window name and view name are mandatory. Okay, so window name, let's say for example w underscore main. Okay, v underscore main. See here you can enter any window name or any view name, but here I'm following the naming conventions. Okay, depending on your project or depending on your project standards, project naming conventions, you can follow your own naming conventions while creating a Web Dynpro component window and view. Here I followed the standards, I mean normal SAP standards, web WDC, ZWDC, Web Dynpro component. Here window name w underscore main, view name v underscore main. Okay, so just click OK. Okay, now here you will have to enter the package name. Okay, when you enter the package name, then it will ask you the transport request, but I am just selecting it as local object, saving it as local object. Yes, now you can see Web Dynpro component has been created successfully. Okay, as soon as Web Dynpro component has been created, there are four controllers created automatically. Okay, four controllers. We discussed about there are six controllers in Web Dynpro ABAP: component controller, custom controller, interface controller, view controller, window controller, and configuration controller. Okay, but here when you create a Web Dynpro component, there are four controllers created automatically by Web Dynpro ABAP architecture or Web Dynpro ABAP framework. Okay, Web Dynpro ABAP is also a framework. Okay, so you see component controller is created automatically. Expand this component interface, you will see interface controller. Interface controller is also created automatically when Web Dynpro component has been created. Views. So view view is a, for every view you will have a view controller. Okay, so window, every window will have a window controller. Okay, here you will see four controllers are created by default when Web Dynpro component has been created. Okay, now let's go to the PPT. Right, now here we will discuss in detail about each controller. What is component controller and what is custom controller? Each Web Dynpro component has at least one global controller, that is component controller. Component controller is a global controller in the Web Dynpro component. I mean, just to make you understand, I will compare with the function group and function module. Okay, function group is a global for all the function modules which are created as part of that function group. So what is for, I mean, in function group, if you declare something, that becomes the global for all the function modules. Okay, all the function modules which are created with respect to that function group. Okay, similarly here in Web Dynpro component also, component controller is a global controller. Whatever you create in the component controller, that becomes the global and accessible across that particular Web Dynpro component. Okay, so custom controller is also a global controller, but it will not be created automatically when Web Dynpro component has been created, but can be created manually in the Web Dynpro component. Okay, but component controller is created by default when Web Dynpro component has been created, but custom controller will have to be created manually. Now, custom controllers are a kind of additional global controllers to capsulate sub-function from the component controller, typically to structure bigger components. Right. Now, custom controllers are created only when you have a bigger component. I mean, just to reduce the load on component controller, we create a custom controller so that the load will be shared across component controller and custom controller. Okay, so custom controllers can also be created explicitly during service calls. Okay, so during service calls is another topic that we will discuss later. Okay, and now component controller or custom controller will not have any visual interface. Okay, and custom controller or component controller will act as a controller as per the MVC architecture. Okay, as per the MVC architecture, model, view, controller. So the controller will steers the application and controller will act as a bridge between view and model. It's that is the I mean, here the component controller will does that job. Okay, now this is what the component controller and custom controller. Now coming to the view controller and window controller. For every view there will be an associated view controller. Okay, for you can have multiple views created in a Web Dynpro component, but SAP best practices recommends restrict the number of views to 18 to 22. So I mean, it's up to you. You can, I mean, you can create a maximum, I think 99 views, but still, just to reduce, when you have multiple views, the performance of the application will be impacted a lot. So that is why to improve, to improve the performance of the application by reducing the load on component controller and entire Web Dynpro component, SAP recommends not to create more than 18 to 22 views in a Web Dynpro component. Okay, so a view is like a local controller. Everything you create in a view specific to view only. Okay, but if you create something in the component controller that is shared, that is shared or accessible across the entire Web Dynpro component. Okay, that is limited within the Web Dynpro component, and across the Web Dynpro component you can access the objects that you created in the component controller. But the objects that you created in the view controller are accessible within the view controller. Okay, window controller. View controller is used to design the screen layout. View is deals with the visualization. Okay, so for screen designing will happen in the view level. Okay, now window controller. Each window has exactly one window controller. Each window will associated with one window controller. Okay, you can have multiple windows in a particular Web Dynpro component. Okay, it behaves like a view controller and is usable from other controllers also. Okay, window controller is also called as global controller. Okay, but window has a limitation. It's not limitation, but window is mainly used for displaying the screen layout that you have done in the view. Okay, you can, views are embedded into a window, and by embedding the views into a window, now when you execute the Web Dynpro application, you can see the screen design that is done in the view. Okay, now we have another controllers, interface controller and configuration controller. Interface controller is used to is used for cross component navigation. Okay, when you have multiple components, to access the data from another component into current component, we will make use of the interface controller. Okay, let's say for example component 1 and component 2, we have two different Web Dynpro components, and Web Dynpro component 1 is trying to access the information of Web Dynpro component 2. So in such scenarios, we will make, interface controller will come into picture, and we will, by making use of the interface controller concept, we can establish a cross component navigation, cross component access. Okay, so configuration controller, as I said, like, whenever you create a configuration for Web Dynpro component, then configuration controller will be created. So these are the 6 different controllers. In the screen you can see this is the structure of Web Dynpro. Here you can see this is the Web Dynpro component name. This is the component controller, component interface. Here you can see interface controller. Okay, and this is called view, and this is associated with one view controller. Every view is associated with one view controller, and here you can create windows. This is window controller, and you have MIME objects also. To display an image or to display a logo in the Web Dynpro application, MIME concept is used. So here you can create a Web Dynpro application. As I said in the first session, it's similar to module program. After module programs cannot be executed directly. In order to see the output that you have designed using module program, you have to create a transaction code and assign that module program to a transaction code, so that by executing the transaction code, we can see the module pool screen design that we have done in the SA51 screen painter transaction. Okay, but similar way, Web Dynpro component also cannot be executed directly. So in order to see the output screen design that we have done in the view, we have to create a Web Dynpro application. Okay, by creating a Web Dynpro application, we can execute the Web Dynpro application and see the output. Okay, so this is what the structure of a Web Dynpro. Okay, now let's just go into the SAP system. Now we will see in detail about each controller. Okay, now I mean the thumb rule is, as soon as you create a WebDynpro component, activate the WebDynpro component first. As soon as you create a fresh WebDynpro component, new WebDynpro component, activate the WebDynpro component first. Okay, I'm just now creating a WebDynpro component. Here, right click on the WebDynpro component and say activate. Okay, say activate. Click OK. Now, here we have multiple interview questions. The first interview question is most important interview question, basic interview question. How many controllers are there and what are they? Okay, how many controllers are there? I mean, sometimes you can say 5 controllers, or you can say 6 controllers also. I mean, let me answer you once again. Component controller, custom controller, interface controller, view controller, window controller, and configuration controller. I mean, the interview question is, how many controllers are there in WebDynpro ABAP and what are they? Component controller, custom controller, interface controller, view controller, window controller, and configuration controller. Now the another important interviewer might ask, what is the difference between custom controller and component controller? I mean, okay, so component controller is created by default, and custom controller will have to be created manually. Each WebDynpro component should have one global controller, and component controller will be created by default. Okay, now interviewer might ask about individual each controller. What is component controller, what is custom controller, what is interface controller, what is the difference between view controller and window controller? These kind of questions might come up. Okay, now here another important thing is, here you see interface views. Okay, this is another important interview question. What is an interface view? Okay, so the answer is, window is also called as an interface view. Interface view is nothing but a window. Okay, window is also called as an interface view. So okay, you can see this window is by default made as an interface view. Okay, so this is important interview question. Okay, now we will just go into each controller. Let me just click on the WebDynpro component first. Here you can see, just double click on the WebDynpro component and you see WebDynpro component name, description, assistance class. As per the MVC architecture, we can use this assistance class as a model. Or if you don't want to create assistance class, you can create a normal class in SC24 and then use that class as a model also. Or the advantage of assistance class is, when you create a assistance class, this is more of like uh, is well comfortable with the WebDynpro component. Okay, so we will see when versus assistance class is created. I will explain you about the assistance class, but here you see created on last all the header information, language, package, and here you can see used components and implemented interfaces. So used components tab will come into picture when you have a component usage. Component, there is a different topic called component usage, then we will use the used components tab. Implemented interfaces, as I said, we have WebDynpro component and WebDynpro component interface. So here in the implemented interfaces, we will define the WebDynpro component interface. Okay, so that I will show you implemented WebDynpro component interfaces. Okay, so now just go into the WebDynpro component controller. Yes, so this is the component controller. Here you can see 5 tabs: properties, here all the header information, context. Yes, what is context? Another basic important interview question is, what is context in the Web Dynpro. Context is a data repository in Web Dynpro ABAP. Context is a data repository in Web Dynpro ABAP. So to make you understand, I will compare with the ABAP. In ABAP, what is the data repository? In ABAP, normal report programs are across the ABAP. Internal tables and structures or work areas are the data repository in ABAP. Okay, internal table will hold multiple records. Structure or work area can hold only one single record at a time. Okay, but now here context, under context you can create context node and context attribute. So context node can act as an internal table. Context node can also act as a structure or work area here. Okay, so we will see in detail about context later. Now see here attributes. So here either you create a context or attributes or events or methods. These are all global context or global attributes or global events or global methods for this Web Dynpro component. Okay, so here attributes, in the attributes you see two attributes are created by default. Okay, so you see wd underscore context, wd underscore this. So these are the reference variables. Basically you don't have to create an instance for these reference variables. Okay, here you see there are two checkboxes, public and reference to associated type. If you want to access the context information of the component controller, to access the component controller context, we will use the attribute wd underscore context. To access the component controller context from any other controller, we have to use the attribute wd underscore context. Except context, to access anything from the component controller, that means either methods or events or attributes, then we will have to make use of the attribute wd underscore this. Okay, here you can see wd underscore context is reference to local controller context. So to access the a component controller context from any other controller, we have to make use of the attribute wd underscore context. To access the component controller attributes or events or methods, then we have to make use of the attribute wd underscore this. Okay, that we will see how to make how to use these attributes while calling the component controller objects from the other controllers, that we will see in the further sessions. In events, yes, events are used to establish a communication between different controllers in a Web Dynpro component. Okay, so different controllers in a Web Dynpro component. Methods. Okay, methods is used to write the logic. Okay, methods are used to write the logic. Here these methods can be used to as controller is used to establish a communication between view and model as it steers the application. So we can write the required logic in these methods to establish a communication between view and model. Okay, here you see I'm in display mode. When Web Dynpro component has been created, there are some methods created in component controller. These methods are called as hook methods. Another important interview question is, what are the hook methods in component controller? What are the hook methods in component controller? These are the hook methods: wd do application state change, wd do before navigation, wd do exit, wd do init, and wd do post processing. Okay, so these are the default methods. These methods are called as hook methods in component controller. Okay, so this is what the component controller. Now just move on to the interface controller. Yes, now you see only 4 tabs are displayed in the interface controller. Okay, now context. Again, context we have already seen in the component controller. So context is a data repository in Web Dynpro ABAP. So here also you can create a context node and context attribute. Events similar to component controller. Methods, you can create methods. Okay, I mean, as I said, interface controller is used to establish a cross component navigation, cross component communication. Okay, now coming to the view. Yes, in view controller we can see multiple tabs here. Okay, properties, header information, layout. This is important tab here. Layout tab is used to design the screen layout. Here in the layout tab we will design the screen layout. Okay, now inbound plugs and outbound plugs. Inbound plugs and outbound plugs are used to achieve the navigation between views. To make you understand, I'll compare with the modulable program. In modulable program also, we might have multiple screens, screen 100, screen 101, screen 102, or 1000, 1001, 1002, something like that. And then when we have multiple screens in module program, to navigate from one screen to the another screen, we can make use of two different statements, that is call screen 1000, call screen 1001, or call screen 1002. I mean, similar way, set screen 1000, set screen. So similar to modulable program, in Web Dynpro ABAP we have, I mean, to achieve the navigation between multiple views, we will make use of the inbound plugs and outbound plugs. Okay, so when we discuss about the navigation, then I will explain more about the inbound plugs and outbound plugs. Now here you can see context. Here also same, context is a data repository, but but the only thing is, as I said, like view controller is a local controller. Whatever you create in a view controller, that is specific to view. So here if you create a context node or context attribute, they are accessible within the view, they are accessible within this view controller. Okay, so that becomes the local to this view. Now here again you have attributes. So here also if you create any attributes, they are accessible within this view. But here you can see three different attributes created by default. Three different attributes are come by default when Web Dynpro component has been created. WD underscore context, the same attribute we have seen in the component controller also, but the purpose of this attribute in component controller and view controller are same, but here WD underscore context attribute is used to access the context information of this view controller only. To access the context information of view v underscore main, we will make use of the attribute WD underscore context. Now to access the methods or inbound plugs or outbound plugs of this particular view, we will make use of the WD underscore this attribute. Okay, for these attributes we will not have to create any instance. Instance is automatically created by Web Dynpro ABAP Framework. Okay, so here you can see WD underscore comp underscore controller. This is additional attribute which is available only in view controller. This attribute is used to access the component controller information. To access the component controller data from view controller, we can make use of this attribute WD underscore comp underscore controller. Okay, see here you can see reference to component controller. So while we are practically working in Web Dynpro component, then you will come across with all these scenarios and I will explain you while using these attributes. Okay, actions. Here you can create actions. I mean, actions are associated with user interaction. Okay, let's say for example button is user interactive. Okay, user has to press on button. So when button is triggered or when button is clicked by user, then some action should be performed. So in such scenarios we create actions. Okay, or link, when user clicks on some link, something should happen. It should open a different application or it should navigate to another screen. So in such scenarios, we will create actions. Okay, methods. So here also you will see some list of methods come by default when Web Dynpro component has been created. So here also we call these methods as hook methods. Hook methods in view controller. Okay, so wdo after action, wdo before action, wdo exit, wdo init, wdo modify view, wdo on context menu. Okay, these are called as hook methods in view controller. Now coming to the window controller. Yes, this is window controller. Here also you can see header information of in properties tab, window. Here you will embed views. Okay, you see, I mean by default v underscore main view has already been embedded in this window. Okay, now coming to the inbound plugs and outbound plugs of window, same concept. Inbound plugs and outbound plugs of a window are used to achieve the navigation between multiple windows. Okay, when you have two windows, you can achieve the navigation between window 1 to window 2 using these plugs. Context, yes, same context is data repository, and the context which is created in window can be accessible within the window. Attributes, yes. Methods, yeah, here also you can see same attributes similar to view. Methods, here also you will see list of methods created. These are all called as hook methods of window. Okay, so this is important interview question. What are the hook methods available in window controller, or what are the hook methods available in view controller, or what are the hook methods available in component controller? But mostly we deal with component controller and view controller. So these two controllers we use very often in the entire Web Dynpro ABAP concept. Okay, component controller and view controller. So these are the four different controllers of a Web Dynpro component architecture. You can create a custom controller like this. Here you can see right click on the Web Dynpro component, mouse right click on the Web Dynpro component, create custom controller. Okay, so like this you can create custom controller. If you want to create another view, additional view like this, you can create a view or you can create a window. Okay, you can use the service call. Okay, you can create a Web Dynpro application. Okay, now like this also you can create a view. Just right click on views, click on create. Okay, click on create so that it will create a view. Okay, here create view component. In this component you can specify the view name, you can specify the view description. So if you want to create a window, just right click on this windows, just click on create. You will get a pop-up, Web Dynpro create window. So this is the component name. You have to specify the window name and description. Click OK. Okay, so like this you can create views and windows. So this is the Web Dynpro ABAP component architecture. Now we will design the some sample screen layout, and we will create a Web Dynpro application and we will see the output. Okay, now I'm just to design the screen layout, we have to go to view. Screen design can happen only in the view level. Okay, under layout tab. Now just go to change mode. Okay, here you can see root UI element container. This is the a parent container under which you can create UI elements. So using UI elements we can design the screen layout. Okay, so UI elements is important word here. UI, what are UI elements? UI elements are used to design the screen layout. Okay, so what are the UI elements that we often use in Web Dynpro ABAP? Text view, page header, drop downs, radio buttons, links, transparent container, group, tray. I mean, all these UI elements we will mostly often use in Web Dynpro ABAP. So now I mean, let me just design this some sample view screen. Okay, I mean, to design the screen layout, just right click on the root UI element container, mouse right click on the root UI element container, click on insert element, click on insert element. Okay, here you have to specify the UI element name. Okay, ID of the UI element. Let's say for example page header. Okay, now here I have to select the type of UI element. Type of UI element. Here you can see list of UI elements. Okay, but here you can see a button, button choice, button row, caption, checkbox. So many, I mean, horizontal gutter, image, input field. So many UI elements are there, but I am selecting the page header. The purpose of the page header UI element is to display the page header. Okay, just click OK. Now you see this page header. Now just go to title. So every UI element will have a list of properties. Okay, properties will vary from one UI element to another UI element. Input field might have some properties, drop down will have a different properties, radio button might have different properties. So properties will vary from one UI element to another UI element. So this is the page header UI element. So page header UI element will have has list of properties. So we should know what property does what. Okay, so what is the purpose of each property, so that you can make use of those properties properly to achieve the expected behavior of the UI element. Okay, see here title. So title property is used to define the text of page header. Okay, now this is my first Web Dynpro application. Okay, just press enter. Yeah, here you can see the text that I have entered in the title property is displayed in the view layout. Okay, now just press save. Okay, it is in inactive. Now just make activate, check, activate. Now if I want to see this screen design as output, I have to create a Web Dynpro application. I cannot execute this Web Dynpro component directly. So what I have to do, I have to create a Web Dynpro application. Just right click on Web Dynpro component, click on create Web Dynpro application. Okay, now you get a pop-up. Yes, just follow the naming conventions. WDA test application. Just press OK. Okay, so here for the application, this is the application name, and here you can see application description, component. So this is the WDC underscore test1. For this component, this application is valid. Okay, so this is the component name. So as I said, interface view is nothing but a window. So window name w underscore main. You can see here plug name. Okay, so for window w underscore main has one default plug created, so that is the name is default. Okay, so here I mean, if I just go to window local objects, just save it as a local object. Now if you go to this window, you can see inbound plugs, default plug. Okay, this is, I mean, for specifically window, there are different plug types: standard plug, startup plug, resume plug. Okay, so I mean, standard plug, startup plug, resume plug are used. I mean, these are the different plug types. This is also another important interview question: what are the plug types available in window? Inbound plugs types. Okay, startup plug, standard plug, resume plug. Okay, startup plug, this plug is executed when Web Dynpro application is launched. Okay, this plug type is used to launch the Web Dynpro application. Okay, now if you just go to the Web Dynpro application, just double click on it. Here you can see plug name. You will have to specify the plug name. Okay, now you see whenever you create a Web Dynpro application, a URL will be generated automatically by Web Dynpro ABAP Framework. Okay, so this is called as fully qualified domain names. Okay, based on the domain name configured by basis in the SSCF transaction, this URL will be generated. Okay, here this path, if I just go to SSCF transaction /o SICF transaction, see here, this is the domain name till 8000. 8000 is the port from SAP. Now let me just execute here. Now default host. Now just see, let me just expand this SAP. See here SAP, then BC. Now then just go to BC. Now from BC Web Dynpro. Now see here Web Dynpro, and then Web Dynpro, and again SAP. Yes, SAP. Now here you will see all the applications created in this system. Okay, so this is configured by basis to create, to place all the Web Dynpro applications created in this system should be follow this path. Okay, so SAP, and then the application name is zwd_test1. Okay, now just go to zwd_test1. Here you can see the application name that we have created, zwd_test name. Yes, this is the application name that we have created. You can test the application from here also. Test service, deactivate service. Okay, test load balancing. I mean, these are all not required for us, for developers. Okay, so this is what the Web Dynpro application. Now you can test this Web Dynpro application from here. You can execute it, or you can just execute this from here itself. Right click on Web Dynpro application and click on test. Okay, right click on the Web Dynpro application and click on test. Now you can see the output. Yes, this is my first Web Dynpro application. Okay, you can see the output, right? So this is my first Web Dynpro application. So this is how we will design the screen layout in view, and in order to see the output, the screen design that we have done in the view, we have to embed that view into a window. Okay, see, this is already embedded in a window because it is created by default. I mean, we have specified the view name and window name while creating a Web Dynpro component itself. Now I will show you once again how to embed a view. Delete. Yes. Okay, just now refresh, save, and just activate it. Now if you just execute the Web Dynpro application, what happens? See, test. You don't see any output. You don't see any output because the screen design has been done in a view. Okay, screen design has been done in a view. Just save again, press save. Yes. Okay, now let me just activate it once again. Activate it. I mean, the best practice is to select the Web Dynpro component, double click on the Web Dynpro component and activate it, so that the advantage is all the objects under this component will be activated as a whole. I mean, instead of activating the independent object, just right click on the view and activate, right click on the window and activate. Instead, if you just double click on the Web Dynpro component and if you click on activate, so all the objects under the Web Dynpro component, all the controllers of this component will be activated automatically. Okay, as a whole. So now just go to view, So here we have designed the screen layout, and in application window is actually related. So okay, in this application we have specified the window, but there is no direct relation between application and view. So now what we have to do, in order to see the output screen design that we have done in the view, we have to embed this view into window. We cannot specify the view in a application. There is no direct relation between application and view. So view must be embedded in a window. Go to window. In this window, just go to change mode. Now here you don't see anything. You don't have anything. I'm just refreshing it again just to make sure there is no screen design displayed. Yes, there is no screen displayed now. Right now, just how to embed a view into a window. Just right click on window, embed view, click on embed view. Now just press F4, select v underscore main. Here you will see list of views, v underscore main, click OK. Yes, now just save, activate it. Now if you just go to the application and now refresh it, press F5, keyboard F5, or you can just refresh from here also. Refresh. Yes, now you can see the screen design that you have done in the view level. Okay, so this is how the application, window and view are related. Okay, that's all for today's sessions. So we will continue the other topics in next session. Thank you.